Mikhailenko here, Dmitry Mikhailenko, the founder, managing partner. We have Sergei Klyutsa. He just put his name here. He's an attorney, a gifted one in Ukraine. We have Andrew Kinsel, a wonderful guide for Americans to Ukraine. He's on the ground in Ukraine. He knows everything. He is smart, reliable, trustworthy, everything you can dream of in having your advisor in Ukraine. And we have Daria from Kroa Mikhailenko, and the rest, I guess you'll have to introduce yourself. Okay. Six attendees. Okay, Larissa, Anton, and Sebastian. Denise. Okay, here we go. So Daria, what should we do with the presentations? Shall I, how do we do this? Дар'я, що ми будемо робити з презентаціями? Кожне показує чи?
Natalya.
Okay.
Please tell us who is the first
Yeah,
speaker.
I'll start first. And then Andrew, we have like more like introductory presentations and brief, and then you go after Andrew.
So we go after Andrew. Great.
Yes.
No, so we should start from the presentation from you or Andrew, correct?
That's right. I just so because I sent all the presentations to Daria and I
moment.
Oh, okay, got it.
What exact presentation should we show?
From you should start with mine. Why invest in Ukraine? And of course, thank you for being here. I was not sure if there would be any interest, but I'm glad there is. And there will be a recording, so you can watch it later. And hopefully we can do some... Okay, good. You can see the presentation. That's great. Okay. Can I see the presentation? Okay.
Yes. Great.
Okay, so for some reason I cannot see my presentation, but I'll see. Up there. Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry, yeah. So I feel like a dinosaur.
Are you seeing that, Natalya?
Yes. No, I'm not seeing that. That's the thing. Okay, I'm seeing that now. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, so why invest in Ukraine now? The next slide, please. Thank you. So now, as we all know, it's a volatile market. So the valuation of the companies is very uncertain, could be very low, and it's usually very low if you're dealing with diligent partners, or you can negotiate the valuation, which is important for the investors, for potential investors. That legislation is becoming more and more democratized, despite the marital law, the martial law. The legislation is becoming more and more democratized towards investors and towards the investment areas, such as renewable energy, such as defense. Of course, we have defense city concept development. We have PPP law just being adopted. And what I wanted to draw your attention to is the funding programs. Why I think it's important is because we have partnership funding programs from the UK, from the European Union, Scandinavia. What does it mean for us or for Ukraine? It means that there will be foreign companies coming as partners as a part of the deal. Basically, the European Union is giving this, for instance, this 38 billion euro under Ukraine Reconstruction Program, having in mind that it will be distributed through European partners. It will be distributed by European banks, through a little bit of grants, and with the the participation of European companies necessarily. It will create the market. It will create the market for the invested properties or invested companies to grow and to participate in. And of course, it will create the paying ability, the paying capacity for potential clients and customers. So we also have the news that Ukraine is becoming part of the European Defense Industrial Program. It's a program. Also, it's still undergoing the process of adoption, but it will be a program where Ukraine will be a part of the partnership with the again with the European companies, defense companies, sharing the technology and developing in Ukraine. So it's the growing market. Then we're also having U.S. Private investors looking to scale. It started, for instance, there is this hero, I would call him that, Del Loy Hansen. He invested $100 million into Ukrainian economy, building affordable housing for Ukrainians. And now he's looking for co-investors. And there are other people like that that are looking for co-investors, which creates a pathway for U.S. investors to go more or less into not a wild area, but more into someone who they can understand, who can then grow trust with. And we also have like I mentioned, SMR, market opening regulatory framework that has just been adopted, that small nuclear modular reactors are becoming more affordable for private players. It's not going to be a state monopoly anymore. We have actually just yesterday I was speaking with a representative of the Department of Energy who said that they are in a close cooperation with Ukrainians on modernizing the technology so that we'll see how private that will become, but it's becoming an opportunity because Ukraine is very interested in growing their energy capacities for understandable reasons. We have, if you could please move this slide, the next slide. We have okay, the background. Okay, we have PPP law that is coming, that was just adopted, which is no longer just concessions. It's recognizing more financing opportunities, more protection for donors. It's again, it's all becoming a little bit more democratized in that sense, and it's a favorable environment for investors to consider. Of course, we understand that there are shelling, there are drones flying around in Ukraine, but also we know it's not going to last forever. We do understand where the line is right now, and it's an opportunity to start preparing, because of course the smart investor will probably not, unless it's very knowledgeable and experienced investor, maybe will not enter the Ukrainian market in one day. So for as a background, I wanted to use like a little history and a piece of advice, so to speak, is that when you enter the Ukrainian market, you have to be aware of that Ukraine is a little bit segmented, and that's why we had so many revolutions in Ukraine. And it is a sign of a democracy and the people's power, but it's also a sign that it's segmented and a little bit divided. And once the administration changes, a lot of things starts changing. So saying that, I'm trying, what I'm implying is that when you choose the area you want to invest in, you have to be careful whether you are closely connected with a government regulated area or tightly regulated area, or whether it's a private players mostly. Like, for instance, we have Andrew Kinsel here, who is very skillful in selecting partners that are not affected by by political regime change or by different parties change. But if you say you're looking for infrastructure project, that's a different story, different concept, and that needs to be taken into consideration. A little bit of the issue as a risk I was mentioning is fluctuating and changing regulatory base. regulatory base, it's like until the last month, I think we had two commercial codes in Ukraine, two codes in Ukraine, commercial code and civil code, and there was a discrepancy, and there were lots of contradictions between the codes, and it was difficult. The court could take a decision, make it take one side or another side, and you could not predict how it would go. Now it's on the civil code, it's been resolved, but still the risk in Ukraine is that the legislation is changing rapidly, and sometimes it's not easy to predict. So again, going into Ukrainian market, you have to be very careful choosing the partners you're working with, understanding the environment, and understanding what the trends. So another like pitfall is the deal structure and exit opportunities. There is like no IPO in Ukraine, no stock market in Ukraine in understanding of the American stock market. There is no SEC to go after you, but that's a different story. So when you are looking to invest in Ukraine, you are looking into growing your business, or maybe looking for the opportunities how to exit. For instance, Kyivstar, major cellular network provider in Ukraine, carrier, they exited by going to NASDAQ. Not every company can do that, but it's the way to do it. There are Ukrainian lawyers in Ukraine who I personally know who can help with the IPO, with going into the IPO. But it's not going to happen in Ukraine. So it's like it's a cross-jurisdictional issue. So that has to be borne in mind, that when you enter the Ukrainian market, you might not experience the same exit as you would experience it in any other country. And of course, and Andrew will cover that with his colorful examples. But we have in the US, we have FARA and FCPA applications, which basically implies that, you know, don't really get too close with the government officials. Don't try anything you wouldn't do in the US. And again, I'm referring to Andrew and his presentation about that. But you have to be you have to be mindful when you're doing business. Some things that are appropriate in other countries are not necessarily appropriate or legal in the US. Nothing wrong with that. You just have to be have to be aware of that. Okay, shall we keep our questions till the... No, you can ask your questions. It will be easier to remember. I'm answering Sebastian's question. Sorry, just saw it. So basically, okay. So basically, when you're looking to consider investing in Ukraine now, you'll have favorable valuation, you'll have flexible negotiation terms. The government is very, very eager to invite you to invest. It's changing the laws. But the other side, the flip side, is that the legislation is a little bit unpredictable, but you will still have your there is a treaty between Ukraine and US about the investment protection. So you'll have your international protection in place, and you will have the investment protection by the Ukrainian government. There's a separate regulation for investors protection. And the next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, I kind of covered that geopolitics and investments. So basically, as I mentioned, Ukraine is kind of divided historically and it's historically represented by different groups, by various groups, and these groups might pursue different interests. So when you consider entering the Ukrainian market, you would consider entering, maybe if you're going to the south, or if you're going to the west, if you're going to the center, you would have to deal with different mentality, with different interests, and you'd have to be you'd have to be prepared that you might you might hear different aspects of the same kind of similarly the same investment, but you'd hear the different aspects in different areas of the countries. And of course, I'd be happy to elaborate more in private if you're interested to learn more about that. And that also implies that when you go into public-private partnership, the power change, if there's elections or there's any other change, it means that the regulations might change, and it means that if you are closely connected with the current government, you might not be as protected or as closely connected with the next government. That's what I has been trying to say. That's it. Next slide, please. Happy to discuss this further. Like I said, don't hesitate to ask me questions, and I have questions from Sebastian. Okay, specific safeguards and frameworks are in place to protect international investments in Ukraine assets in the moment. Okay, yes. So there is a treaty between the US and Ukraine that protects the companies of the US origin with the US founders. It protects it from expropriation. It protects it from illegal persecution, unlawful persecution, and it protects the investments. Basically, the Ukraine cannot take away your investments without due process, without going to court, and without proving that that you violated the law, basically. And even then, the U.S. government has the upper hand on protection under the treaty. Has the upper hand on protection and enforcing your rights as an investor in Ukraine. Specifically, this is implemented through the Department of Commerce, the Trade Department, Department of Commerce, that has its representative at the embassy in Kiev, and I believe there's also another representative right now, but Department of Commerce is the one who protects the Ukrainian interests, the country's interest on the site, basically. I hope that helps. There's also taxation favorable environment, but I will leave that to Dmitro Mikhailenko, because he is the professional in that and he'll cover that. Does it answer your question? And I'll be happy to talk more afterwards if you want to discuss this. Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, thank you. Well, I get it's Andrew's turn. You're welcome. And yeah, don't hesitate to follow up with questions. Right. So it's, yeah, Andrew's turn and Andrew's presentation. Okay. I'll move it so we can all see that.
Oh, yeah. Good, thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So I can go ahead now, Natalya?
Yes, please go.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. So Natalya, thank you. That was an interesting presentation. And I'd like to thank Kro Mikhailenko for arranging this event. I know a lot of time has gone into it. I'd also like to thank everybody that's actually taken time out of their busy schedule to be here with us today, either in person or maybe from Kiev or from other parts of the world. I'm in Kiev right now, and you know, it's amazing that in this time that there is so much interest in investing in Ukraine. So the elephant in the room, obviously, is that there is a war. And that brings us together, but that also brings amazing opportunities. So, and I think if it's okay with you, Natalya, there's a lot of people that have suffered from the Russian invasion, and I think it would be okay if we just had a moment of silence for them, for our friends, for our family members? Can we do that?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
So, out of respect to Ukraine. Okay, so let's I'm American. I'm a foreigner. I was born in Houston, Texas, and I came to Ukraine in 1992. Yeah, let's go to the next slide, please. I've run my own business here. I've been managing partner of a media company. I've been crisis manager for quite a few different companies, supporting also business owners on sell side, transaction support, which basically means helping get their company ready for sale and then selling it, as well as helping investors review opportunities for investment into Ukraine. I think that Ukraine has a lot of amazing opportunities. I mean, we all know about, the world famous Black Earth, and now we also know about the world famous rare earths that nobody had ever heard of before. What a lot of people don't know is that Ukraine is actually, I had a couple transactions that were in process before the war, and the owners, the potential buyers, were excited that they would be able to travel from Europe to Ukraine, be at home in the morning and be at their office in the afternoon, as opposed to working with their Chinese factories, where it takes a day to get there. They also love the idea of 1 to 3 days door to door, as opposed to 45 to 60 days door to door if you're importing from China or Vietnam or somewhere in Asia to any European market. So, yeah, the working capital that's required, the ease of being on a similar or the same time zone if you're traveling from Europe. If you're investing from the US, it's a little bit different, right? It's a little bit further, but still the proximity to such a huge market is really important. Ukraine has a very flexible and dynamic labor force. So I've heard multiple people say that the cost per value for Ukrainian workers, in a very practical term, is better than Chinese workers or Southeast Asian workers. The Ukrainians, for the same amount of money, get a lot more done. And so that's I think those are some of the most amazing reasons or interesting reasons why companies are looking at investing in Ukraine. Um, let's go to the next slide, please. We're also aware that when this dark cloud passes from Ukraine, that hopefully $1 billion, or excuse me, not $1 billion, $1 trillion is expected to be invested in 5 to 10 years after the war is over, right? So at least we hope so. And I think it's a realistic chance. I think that there's a lot of private money that's excited to come into Ukraine, that they've seen some of the opportunities and the resilience. And they're just looking for the opportunity to actually make the entry. At least we hope so, right? That's why we're here. So next slide, please. A lot of that is on the horizon. But what can a company that's interested in profits do now, or an investor that's interested in profits do now? So I think that there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, where in the world can you get trade finance debt from a commercial bank cheaper than you can buy a government loan? Yeah, I mean, if you're exporting from Ukraine, you can get trade finance from banks for 6 to 8% in euros. And that's excellent, right? There's multiple companies here that are for sale for, say, 4 or 5, 6 times EBITDA. In world markets, that's a bargain. You can buy real estate here that's income generating real estate that's got a 10-year cash on cash payback period. And that's not even taking into consideration any capital appreciation that might happen post-war. rent income increases that might happen as relaxation of stresses on the economy after the war either calms down, cools down, or comes to an end. So I think, realistically, if we're looking at financial services, farming, agro-processing, building materials, subsoil resources, it's here. And there's opportunities to enter the market now. I think what makes investing in Ukraine different? So it is. Sorry, I got a slide ahead of me. It is different. I mean, you come here and you look around, and it seems like you're in a country, but realistically, the language is a little bit different. It's not English, it's not American, it's not it's not Polish. There is a different language. And even when when you have a great translator, sometimes they don't necessarily understand what you're talking about. The culture is different and exciting, as many cultures are different and unique in their own ways. The legal system has nuances. There's people's attitudes are different. Just like if you're going from America to France, it's all of these things are a little bit different. If you're going from America to Vietnam, all of those things are a little bit different. So we just have to be realistic that Ukraine also is a little bit different in its own way. Next slide, please. So I've worked with many different foreigners doing business in Ukraine and actually Ukrainians. And right now I'm in the process of selling a company owned by a Ukrainian to a Ukrainian. So I'm involved in that Mizigash as well. And I'm always sort of amazed about how some foreigners come here and they just kind of check their brains at the door. Um, I think that there's this image that's in the West, and I think some of it is definitely pushed by the Russians, that Ukraine is just somehow you can kind of do anything in Ukraine. And that's a really good way to get yourself in a lot of trouble. I've seen people, and these are all real things that I've seen mentioned here, right? So I've seen people hire their driver and put them in as director of the company because they knew, I don't know, the mayor, somebody like that. Well, that's not the right way to run a company. Would you do that in the United States? No, right? You wouldn't. So don't do it here. There's Ukrainians have a great way of coming back and saying, "Oh, we can't make a plan because everything changes all the time, because there's a war, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, because maybe the lights are going to go out." And it's like, okay, just don't buy into it. Okay, you wouldn't accept that in Chicago, you wouldn't accept it in New York, and you shouldn't accept it here. And once you set down those guide rules that we have to have a plan, and we will have a plan, and we will stick by the plan, then guess what? You can really make it like get some progress according to that plan. So there's other things here. I could go on for a long time, but I promised to do this in maximum 10 minutes. So Natalya, I'll really do my best to keep to this promise. A couple things that people that I've just seen. Please, if you do come here, don't have this opinion that I can just throw $100 around and it's going to solve the problems. You're just going to get yourself in more problems, because actually Ukrainians don't do that.
FTPA. Just.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, but anyway, I've seen people do it and they think that it's fair. And again, Ukrainians don't do it. I see foreigners sometimes coming here and doing things that they not only wouldn't do it in their own country, but Ukrainians also don't do. When you're negotiating with Ukrainians love to negotiate about everything. And here I'm getting to my third to last point here. Never agree to a bad compromise just to get the deal done, or because tomorrow you'll sort it out. Nope. Sort it out now. Get it all talked through. Don't make the compromise. If they come to you, then it's probably worth doing. If you have to not only bend over backwards, but to break your back doing so, then it's probably a good deal to walk away from. So And what I'm at risk of doing right now, don't talk too long because I've seen people give wonderful speeches, and I've watched the interpreter's face almost drop into tears because they didn't write it down and they totally lost the train of thought. So if you're going to come here, these are just a couple practical things. Let's move on to that you shouldn't be doing, and now let's move on to a couple practical things that you should be. Next slide, please. So first of all, properly craft your articles of incorporation. Your articles of incorporation is what's going to give, it allocates the rights between you and your partners, or you and the director as you as owner, or the director. It allocates responsibilities, and you really, if that is well crafted, it sets you up down the road for avoiding a lot of potential issues, right? There is something called the standard articles of incorporation, which lawyers very often try and present to their clients. In my opinion, it's suicide unless you are the owner and the director of the company to use the standard articles of incorporation. They're nice, but they don't address a lot of the issues that you actually need to address in terms of voting rights, share rights, allocation of authority, and so forth. Ukraine also is a very dynamic situation for a lot of different reasons, and it has a very different history. So the Soviet Union ran most of Ukraine from, let's just say, 1917. Before that, a lot of what is presently Ukraine was under the rule of the Russian Empire, and that means that they have a very different perspective, for instance, than maybe the Czechs, the Poles, that when they got independence in 1989 from the Soviet Union, there were still people alive that remembered rule of law, democracy, and things like that. So that doesn't. Ukrainians are incredibly fast about learning things, right? So focus on sitting down, spend the time to be with your team, hire great people. There's a lot of great people here, and make sure that you're really training them, working together with them, discussing through with them, making them present back to you what you're trying to achieve. If you do that, they're going to move mountains for you. They're going to love the respect that you're giving them. They're going to love the fact that they are empowered to do something, because in a lot of Ukrainian companies, people are not empowered. The boss makes all the decisions. So when you empower your team, they're absolutely thrilled about that. Demand financial discipline, demand discipline in your documentation. Never sign very overarching powers of attorney, giving somebody too much authorization to dispose of assets, or sign bank loans and things like that, right? Just be smart about things like that. But really, be there with your company. One thing that I see a lot of foreigners do is they try to outsource being the director. I'm the director of my company. I've been directors of other companies, and I know quite a few successful foreign companies where the foreigner, who's the director or the owner, personally has signature authorization on all important paperwork. I would highly recommend in your articles of incorporation that somebody from outside of Ukraine, or the foreigner, the owner, the investor, has to sign off on any and all loans, on all disposal of significant assets. So assets above $10,000, for instance, that anything that is being revalued by the accounting team that had a valuation above $10,000 needs to be signed off, and so forth. So these are just practical things. Make sure you do it, and that'll keep you very safe. I think next slide. So when you're entering into Ukraine, there's a lot of ways that you can enter today and significantly limit your risk. So yes, as Natalya said, yeah, there's Shaheeds flying around, but guess what? They're not flying everywhere. They tend to be targeted at certain areas. They tend to be limited to certain areas. So if, for instance, you are going to build a factory, probably it's a good idea to make sure that the local military base is at least a couple kilometers away. And that gives you a lot of opportunities. If you're in the military industrial complex, for instance, and I had what I consider a strange conversation yesterday. So there's a bunker that was built in 1973 that is nuclear blast proof. It's close to a city, and it's perfect for construction of, say, drones or secure radios or something like that. So I was speaking with a drone producer, and I said, it's $1 million. He said, yeah, we're going to buy another facility that's about $500,000. And I said, really? And it's smaller, and it's not hardened. So if one $50,000 Shahed happens to fall on your warehouse that you're building, then you're losing not only the warehouse you just bought, but all of the inventory and the equipment inside. Whereas you could just move into this completely secure facility and not even notice if a ballistic missile drops on your head. Your coffee's not even going to shake. So, I mean, in my opinion, that's being a little bit penny wise, pound foolish, or something like that. But be smart on where you're placing your facilities, your offices, your production. I would consider limiting investments. We all know that there's restrictions, and there has been restrictions on repayment of dividends and so forth. To the extent that you can, and please seek professional advice before doing this. But really highly consider sending in shareholder loans. Establish a Ukrainian local entity, send it a shareholder loan, and then use your local entity with the shareholder loan to buy whatever it is you're looking at doing here. Generally, repatriation, repayment of interest on loans, repayment of the principal is generally more accepted or easier to do than repayment of equity or payment of dividends. Use local bank debt when you can. So if you're trying to get debt in hryvnias, it's relatively expensive. I think it's 16-18%, up to 20+% per annum. But if you are exporting, or if you do have the opportunity to use because you're exporting, seek debt in dollars or euros, then please do so. The banking system here is very liquid. There's a lot of opportunities. There's shorter term loans, longer term loans, but consider local bank debt. If you're not bringing your money into Ukraine, you're using local resources, then you have less at risk, right? As the investor. The Ukrainian government has a lot of grants available. Other countries have grants available and low interest loans for purchasing equipment. So the picture of the equipment here, actually on this page, one of my clients got a 50% grant from the Ukrainian government to buy this equipment as long as they hired a couple of people, right? So they not only used one Ukrainian facility, so actually they financed the entire thing. They used one Ukrainian debt facility where the government's giving 5, 7, 9% per annum loans in hryvnias, which is below the inflation rate. Then they piggybacked that with another project where the government gave a 50% grant for the equipment. So this was a very good purchase for them, and you can use these to your advantage as well. Be smart about your locations in the beginning with tax incentives, defense city, industrial parks. There's a lot of opportunities for protection of your investment and profit, not having to pay profit tax in the future, VAT, and so forth. So. And one thing that Natalya mentioned, I tend to prefer projects that do not have a dependency on government support. And frankly, if I was in America, I would also probably have an allergy. And I don't mean to pick on America. I'm not picking on Trump, Biden, Germany, France. Anywhere I go, when I see companies that have dependency on governments for support, to me, it makes me wonder how valid the underlying business model is. What happens if the government support changes? For instance, a lot of German companies had a problem a couple of years ago because the German government decided to change the green tariff rates. Ta-da. So this isn't a risk that's limited to Ukraine. It's a risk that investing in other countries also needs to be considered. So next page, please. So just in summary, the photo, this is a photo I took a couple of years ago. It's to me, it's a beautiful combination of three things. In front of us, in the foreground, there's a bunch of packages. So those packages are donations from Europeans, mostly European companies, to this facility where they're repacking medical equipment and actually making medical equipment, including medic backpacks and things like that were sent out to people, to soldiers and so forth. The other side, at the back of the hall, is a distribution warehouse for supermarkets. So to me, it sort of merges what we see in Ukraine, the private sector and social society really coming together to help keep Ukraine strong and resilient. And I think that at that cusp, that's what we're doing here today. We are coming here not because we are interested in helping Ukraine, because Ukraine deserves the support, but we're also interested in coming into Ukraine to make it profit. And there are reasonably safe ways to make a profit now. So next page, please. So I'm done. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, or I'd be willing to entertain any questions that you have now.
Thank you, Andrew. There is a question from Sebastian about media and tech sector.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it.
Mm-hmm.
So tech sector is highly competitive and produces a lot for the military. It's huge private and state opportunity. Media is less attractive at the market. I would agree with you.
Well, Sebastian's question was, what about media and tech sector? And Sergey helped you out and commented on that. But if you could comment on that.
Sergey, I think your answer is very good. So media in general is very stressed right now. There are opportunities in media, but when companies are how do you say, in 2022, when companies had to move into survival mode, right? They really cut back on their advertising spending, which meant that a lot of media that's available, that's still around today, was either financed by the owners or was receiving some sort of donations, or from, I would say, essentially from the Ukrainian government or from Western governments. I tend to focus on businesses that do not have a dependency on donations or government funding, because if the government changes or if donors change their mind, then your business is gone. Again, there are opportunities, and I'd be happy to look at anything. I've actually run a media company and started some magazines. As for tech, there are a lot of opportunities in tech. We all know Ukrainian unicorns that have come out. I could go on for a while on tech, but I think if you're interested in specific opportunities or how to structure those opportunities, then probably reach out to me directly. That would be the wisest use of everybody else's time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. I hope that was useful. And it's Friday, so for everybody on the East Coast, it's Friday morning. Enjoy your day. And for everybody over here, it's Friday evening. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Dmitro, you next.
Well, thank you. One moment, we will start our presentation. As I understand, Sebastian's question was about the double tax treaty between Ukraine and USA, and at the end of this presentation, we will give answers to the question. I will start with some background information of the tax and legal environment in Ukraine, which is necessary for foreign investments coming to us. First information is the most popular form of business organization in Ukraine. It is LLC, or in Ukrainian Товариство з обмеженою відповідальністю, або ще otherwise TOV, as you see at the screen. It is quite comfortable form of business organization and registration. It doesn't require share capital, no minimum share capital. The minimum number of shareholders is 1. No registration fee, and quite humble fee for some changes to the registration information. Charter should be completed in written form. There is possibility to use the so-called standard charter. And requirements for audit of this company are starting from so-called middle-sized company. It is where they reach the total assets 2 million, or revenue 4 million, or average number of employees more than 50. You should fall into 2 of these 3 criteria in order to be subject to statutory audit in Ukraine. The more complicated form, public company or joint stock company, I will pass through, because there is no need on the stage of startup of the investment in Ukraine to go to this more complicated organizational form. And I took a couple of minutes, will take a couple of minutes on the form of so-called branch of permanent establishment. It is also quite possible, quite possible and useful form of startup business, and especially if you want not to make commercial, not to lead commercial activities in Ukraine, but rather to survey business environment and to find information of how to go or to promote or to advertise your business. That is some so-called activities which do not recognized as permanent establishment, and oftenly called as a representative office of the non-resident in Ukraine. It is also quite easy registered and requires similar procedures as if you start up LLC. As to the main taxes in Ukraine, we have value-added tax, unlike USA. In USA, you know, no VAT, but instead of it, so-called sales tax for the retail sales. The basic VAT rate in Ukraine is 20%. We have several reduced rate for agricultural product, supply of medicines, and 0 rate for export of goods. Therefore, for the investors, is quite popular form of business is export business. That is to produce anything in Ukraine and that export it outside. And in such case, 0 VAT is applicable. And if you buy with input-related VAT in Ukraine, so VAT refund should be followed. VAT returns should be submitted on a monthly basis, in rare cases on the quarterly basis. Major tax exemptions, loans, financial credit, shares, securities, distribution of dividends, paying royalty, services supplied beyond the territory of Ukraine, sale of residential apartments, and so on. And the threshold which is necessary, threshold of sales after which the VAT registration is necessary, is 1 million hryvnias. It is not very big amount. It is about 25,000 of those. Not very big amount. Corporate profit tax, we have the general rate at 18%. several special rates for banks, for financial institution, for insurance company, tax base worldwide profit, certain tax exemptions or restriction for deductibility. We will go further when at the other presentation. Currently, I will pass it. We have certain taxes on the interest, royalties, dividends coming outside Ukraine to the foreign companies. And here you can see the list of double tax treaties of Ukraine with the other country, and the double tax treaty with USA establish reduced rates for dividends at 5%, for royalties at 10%, and for interest 0%. So it is not a very bad double tax treaty between Ukraine and USA. Coming back to our overview of taxation, personal income tax for the individuals is 18%. In certain cases, we have tax benefits. Moment. And as well, we have so-called military tax, which is aimed for the financing of martial activities in course of the war with Russian Federation. Currently, it constitutes 5%. We have small business regime where the taxes are reduced to 5 plus 1.5%, that is 6.5% for the revenues of private entrepreneurs, small private entrepreneurs, which gain less than 10 million hryvnias. It is about $250,000. Mandatory social contribution, 22% from the gross salary. As well, benefit for small business where the contribution is paid from the minimum level, from the minimum salary. Currently, contribution in such case constitutes $37, very small. And of course, we have maximum cap for social contribution. Currently, it constitutes $744 for the revenues, which constitutes 160,000 hryvnias. It is about $4,000. So we have minimum level and maximum level, or a cap. Taxation of immovable property, we have such taxes. It is not very big tax at now. And incentives. We have certain tax incentives for investment funds, and we actively use it for the business and tax structures. We have R&D incentives, so-called Diia City regime, which allows to not to pay tax until the distribution of dividends, and to pay for the employees with reduced tax rates, 5 personal income tax plus 5 military tax, total 10%, plus minimum mandatory social contribution. So the overall tax burden in case of Diia City regime shall come up 11%, no more, while the general taxation of salaries comes up to 36% or about it. So Diia City regime allows us to pay 3 times less than general regime of taxation of employees. Certain educational incentives, we will pass it through. And we will additionally come back to the most popular tax regime, but we will do it at another presentation. One moment, We'll show it. No, not this one. Hot topics. Hot topics. This presentation is aimed to show the most important issues or problems with which foreign investment come across while going to Ukrainian market and to Ukrainian environment. Most of these problems come from the quite vast tax reform which was held on 2020 and was addressed to so-called anti-offshore tax structuring. On the top of this reform, we have taken and now apply certain restrictions which work against tax structuring in area of international trade or international holdings. First issue, it is capital gains. You can see at the screen the structure of the arrangement when one non-resident sell to another non-resident the shares of Ukrainian company. Principally, this transaction shouldn't be taxable in Ukraine unless these shares take the most of their value from the real property which is situated in Ukraine. In this latest case, the non-resident who purchased the shares shall pay 15% of withholding tax to the Ukrainian budget from the profit of non-resident seller. Remembering that quite a significant industry in Ukraine is agriculture, which is based on the value of the land or other real property, we should remember of these provisions of Ukrainian legislation. Next, so-called deemed dividends. If the goods or services are sold or purchased by Ukrainian company to the related party or to low jurisdiction non-resident, and the sale of this purchase, the sale of these services or goods is not in the diapason
in the range.
Yes, of arm's length price. So at the cost or at the price which is exceeding out of this merge, this amount is recognized as the dividends and respectively should be taxed as dividend outbounding from Ukraine. So the purchase or sale out of arm's length prices should be additional taxed as dividends, deemed dividends. The good news that from 2025, the list of low tax jurisdiction was narrowed. The most popular jurisdiction which has connection to Ukraine, likewise Emirates, Cyprus, Ireland, and Hong Kong, were excluded from this list. Therefore, the importance of this rule also was mitigated. As well as the next rule, this business purpose test, which was also addressed to the transaction with low tax jurisdiction, and if they are held without business aim, so all the amount should be excluded from, should be taxed by corporate profit tax. Since this rule addressed to low tax jurisdiction, respectively, it is it gets less important since certain jurisdiction was excluded from the list. As well as transfer pricing rule. Ukraine implemented these rules about 10 years ago, and they addressed either the transaction with a related party or the transaction with low tax jurisdiction. And it starts applying when the Ukrainian company has annual revenue exceeding 150,000 millions hryvnias, it is about $3.6 million. And if the very transaction with such non-resident exceeds 10 million hryvnias, it is around $150,000. In such case, we should prepare transfer pricing documentation, and if the price exceeds normal market price, so the respective tax assessment due to corporate profit tax should be applied. Thin capitalization rule very oftenly applied if the financing of Ukrainian company is executed by loan from non-resident, and if the overall amount of borrowing is more than 3.5 times than the net assets of Ukrainian company borrower. In such case, the deductibility of the respective interest under this loan is restricted. It shouldn't exceed 30% of taxable profit of Ukrainian company. Permanent establishment rule as well exists in Ukraine, and in such case, the activities of non-resident like selling from warehouses should be recognized as permanent establishment as a simple corporate profit taxpayers and with respective of taxation like LLC. As well, Ukrainian government take significant efforts for adjusting double tax treaties between Ukraine and the countries where the rates of interest, rates of VHT for interest, royalty, or dividends was zero. It concerned such countries like Cyprus, Great Britain, Switzerland, Netherlands, and Austria. And at the top of this work, this country agreed to apply more significant rates of withholding tax comparing with the previous years. And now we come into tax allowances which exist in Ukraine and allows to structure business in such way that the amount of corporate profit tax or other taxes may be paid significantly lower comparing with the general regime of taxation. First of all is investment funds or collective investment fund or corporate investment fund. Such structures are exempt from corporate profit tax, and for this reason, they, if they provide interest-bearing loans or collect royalties, these amounts are exempt from taxation, while the counterparties which pay interest or pay royalty can deduct this amount from their taxable base. Small business. Of course, in Ukraine, it is a very popular instrument for mitigation of tax burden, since the single taxpayer generally pay 5% of single tax and 1.5% military tax, instead 18 plus 5% under the general regime of taxation. Small business covers not only individual taxation, but also legal entities. But it is allowed when the annual revenue is up to 9 million hryvnias, it is about 2,000 euros, so not very big amount. Anyway, around 1 million of persons in Ukraine enjoy such tax regime. It is very widespread, especially in IT business. Agriculture. Agricultural company may use simplified regime of taxation, while they shouldn't pay corporate profit tax at 18% regime, and the tax is calculated on the square of their land plots which they possess or rent. Diia City regime, it is also a regime of IT taxation. I have mentioned it before. It allows not to pay corporate profit tax until the distribution of dividends, and even in such case, the rate of corporate profit taxation is 2 times less than general rate, 9% instead 18%. So, and the personnel of the city company enjoys 3 times less taxation comparing with the situation when they were employed under the general rules in usual company. As well, we have within this regime quite a pretty good exemptions for distribution of dividends. If the shareholders of Diia City are individuals, they can be exempted from the individual taxation. And if the shareholder of Diia City company is non-resident, so of course, upon distribution of dividends, we should pay withholding tax, mainly at 5%. But this amount of withholding tax is deducted against 9% of corporate profit tax of the city companies. Therefore, the effective rate of taxation should be not 18, not 9, but 4% at the territory of Ukraine. It is a very good regime. 2 months ago, our government announced of defense city regime, which provide tax exemptions in area of corporate profit tax in case of reinvestment, real estate tax, land tax, and environmental tax. Currently, Miltech industry enjoy both Diia City regime because Diia City also cover certain production of military aims, and this new one defense city regime, which we only start applying. And the maybe last 2 incentives is so-called industrial parks and Invest-nannies. Industrial parks, they are similar. Here we compare these 2 regimes of taxation. We see that both industrial park and investment-nanny enjoys exemption from corporate profit tax for a certain period of time, exemption of VAT and customs duty upon the import of certain equipment which is necessary for their activities, exemption from land tax, and exemption from real estate tax. So they are similar. Industrial park covers certain land plots, so they connected with territory, while investment-nanny covers big projects where huge amount of investment is addressed to Ukraine in order to develop certain business. It is a form of agreement between the investor and Ukrainian government. That is all information which I would like to share with you. I hope that it is useful for you to understand what exact regime of taxation you should choose in order to enjoy moderate tax burden upon your investment in Ukraine. Here is my contacts. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share this knowledge with you. And thank you, Ms. Natalya, for inviting us. Hello.
Thank you, Dmitro. As far as I understand, it's my time to start my presentation. Thank you, everyone, for staying so long with us. I will your attention to transfer some information about security problems in Ukraine. And in fact, such security problems are overestimated abroad. In fact, staying in Ukraine, doing Ukraine is much safer than it can be seen from abroad. So my presentation will be dedicated to protection of investments, practical cases of protecting businesses. My name is Serhiy Kluza. I'm an attorney. I work in this area for more than 20 years, and people hire me, receive my and they deal with litigation procedures in courts or criminal proceedings. So I see bad sides of, but even in such area, I see that situation in Ukraine is not so desperate that Russia tries to show us. Russia is slowing its approach. Is it true? In 2014, when the first attack appeared and Russia had conquered Crimea Peninsula, Russia controlled almost 70,000 square miles of Ukrainian territory. In 2022, the open attack appeared and Russia controlled 42,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. Within the last 3 years, Russia controls only 33,000 square meters of Ukrainian territory. Ukraine totally has 375,000 square miles of territory. So the territory of Ukraine is its protection. The territory of occupation is out of Ukrainian law, and the territory when the war is going, the war zone, has special legal regime, and it's really dangerous. But this territory is rather small in comparison with the rest of the territory of Ukraine. So Ukraine gets used in war, and investments are also used to do in war. People think that country in war has problem with civil security. Nonsense. Police personnel in Ukraine in 2022, before the war started, was 130,000 policemen officers. Today, we have 100,000 policemen officers guaranteeing civil security in non-occupied area out of war zone. Their work is very efficient because there was no civil rights since 2022. Crimes are happening, but as orderly in every society. The war hasn't caused a huge amount, a rise of huge amount of crimes, and that's the result of efficiency of Ukrainian police, the result of efficiency of Ukrainian civil society also. Police can show the misfeasance, malfeasance, or non-feasance, but such effects are very rare because when Russian aggression started, police officers were the first who counted aggression, who protected the civil residents of the cities, and they forgot about their possibilities to use their strength in their own favor instead of favor of the citizens. And such situations still continue in Ukraine. Corruption among the police officers is rather low, in fact. Electronic documents, integral databases, and restoration of public video make prevention even easier in Ukraine. In 2022, when the war, video control on streets was forbidden in order to hide the transfer of military force. But today, such video control is very efficient, and almost all traffic disasters are investigated successfully, and all people who committed such offenses are taken to responsibility. Integral electronic data of people who are wanted, accused of in crimes or administrative offenses in persons with access to any police officer anytime makes it very easy to find all the offenses. Also, it makes harder for Russians to use their saboteurs in Ukraine. In 2022, Russians, common to their own systems of information, sent their saboteurs with Ukrainian documents captured in 2013 in order to make chaos in Ukrainian territory. But their papers were very easy, identified as forged because they were not linked with our electronic databases, and all such people were arrested and taken as war captivities. Civil society in Ukraine shows its efficiency in a force to reduce crimes. Even on the territories that are not controlled by Ukrainian police, for example, in the war zone, crimes are very rare because civilians do their best to stop criminals. Absence of police officers near the war zone does not affect crimes against property. Neighbors protect houses of each other. They are not afraid to stop criminals and transfer them in hands of military forces or police officers. Self-defense in Ukraine is also rather spread and highly motivated. It's very rare a situation when court can declare such self-defense as not necessary in these circumstances. We have a case of Serhiy Sternenko, a person who tried to protect himself against the invader and killed this person after stopping the direct aggression. He was attacked with a person armed with a knife. He stopped the person, escaped. Serhiy Sternenko pursued him and killed him with a knife. Serhiy Sternenko was called not guilty because he was protecting himself for a long period of time. That's why Ukraine shows civil society doing its best to control civil security. Civil security in Ukraine is even higher than it was before the wide war happened. Courts also do their job even in the war zone. There was almost 200 courts replaced in Ukraine due to Russian aggression since 2014. But since that time, more than 50 of them returned to their previous positions and continue their work in the previous premises. Other courts continue their work on other premises in other regions. That's why our court's judicial system is still operating and operating very efficiently. Our judicial system uses electronic services very efficiently and widely. Online proceedings and online data storage. Our courts issue paperless executive documents. You don't have to attend to the court to file a lawsuit, to represent your party in a court, or receive the executive document to provide it to enforcement. All these stages can be done without personal attendance to the court, being safe where you are. Even from the other side of the world, you need only have very efficient internet connection. Ukraine has one of the best internet worldwide connections in the world, and its access is very wide. Ukrainian courts are thought to be corrupt, but it's not true. This information is spread widely by the Russian Federation. In fact, we have 4 different groups of courts, and only one group can be called corrupted sometimes. Commercial courts solve disputes between commercial companies or between individual sole traders and companies. Also, they solve disputes about corporate about corporate rights and management of the companies. All other disputes between individuals are subject to common courts. Commercial courts in Ukraine solve disputes rather quickly. We can receive final court decision within 6 or 12 months, this period. Common courts deal with private persons, more likely. That's why they provide more guarantees for private persons to find a qualified lawyer to protect himself, to have more time to gather evidence. That's why its proceedings are longer, approximately 20 or 80 months. Within this period, you will receive a final court ruling that will be the basis for your enforcement document in order to help you to enforce your damaged right. In case you have any disputes with the state officials, we have separate system of administrative courts. They also operate in Ukraine. in all regions. They solve disputes every year in any relations with any official Ukrainian body. The term of the disputes resolution, approximately 20 or 18 months. It depends on the area. For example, in Kyiv is the worst situation in all Ukraine solving administrative disputes. Because in Kyiv, there was try to make a reform and established instead of one Kyiv court administrative, another one. They destroyed existing court, and without creating new court, the war has started. That's why all the disputes of Ukrainian Kyiv court were transferred to other courts in Ukraine, especially to Kyiv regional court. And that's why the court is overwhelmed with different cases, and we can wait 18 months to receive its court ruling. In fact, the most heard disputes and the most influential and thought that they are corrupted are specialized courts, political courts. It's anti-corruptional criminal courts. We have two courts, the basic court and the court of appeal, dedicated just for anti-corruptional criminal cases. State officials who are accused in corruption are sentenced only in that court. And we have new special administrative courts that are formed just now. In case that will any disputes between individuals or companies with our main government offices, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, the ministries, all such disputes should be subject to special administrative courts. If we divide all cases and cut off political courts, in all other courts that sometimes happens corruption. Yes, it's true. But in my 20 years of experience doing business of advocate in Ukraine, it's less than 2% of all cases. That's why Ukraine do its best to fight corruption. And we can rely on consistency of Ukrainian court system to solve disputes and protect investor rights. Also, despite the war, our antitrust regulation body takes its action in Ukraine and helps protect business from being subjugated by bigger ones. For example, in Ukraine, we have the situation of preventing business concentrations. If one company has more than 20% of the market of the separate product, all future mergers, acquisitions of that company, or the companies that control it, should be made only after previous consent of the antitrust body. In 2022, when the wide intervention just happened, there was a softening of this situation. They could be received such permissions post factum after that event happened. But it existed, such situation, only within 6 months. And more than 2 years, the situation with business concentration is previously that it was before the war has started. Protection of fair competition is also a very important part of antitrust regulations in Ukraine. For example, one company that provided you consumers with false information about the source of their product is fined in Ukraine almost on $1 million fine, because they have written that their product is have source from Carpathian region of Ukraine, from the mountains, very clean, very ecologically beneficial. But in fact, they provided product from other region of Ukraine, less luxury less healthy. And such information was found by our antitrust office, and such company was fined, and fine was rather high for it. So $1 million for companies that sells mineral water is very strict. Also, our antitrust regulation prevent coordinated actions on market of Ukraine. So big dealers cannot coordinate their actions and make the life of their smaller competitors impossible. If such situation happens, our antitrust office found this out, and fine will be up to 5% of such coordinated action actors for the previous year income. Not income, but all the money, the cash flow of the work. That's why, for example, 2 months ago, 2 biggest Ukrainian pharmacy distributors were fined almost $1 billion each for actions they have committed together. The investigation of our antitrust office was very simple. They received the price fluctuation for their main products that they are compete on the market. They found that prices were changing in the same dynamics, but without any other significant relevant market events that could cause such fluctuations. So the result, they made decisions that the price fluctuations were agreed, coordinated action, and each company received very high fine. That's why if you have business in Ukraine, you can be sure that any unfair competition or any coordinated actions against your business would be at least complicated. And usually they are not committed at all. But Ukraine also have a biggest threat, that lack of qualified personnel. Such lack suffers affects also a security service, security area. Police have 30,000 open positions. There are almost 20,000 open positions in courts. Usually it's clerks and other personnel, but also judges. There are a lot of free empty places for judges. Some courts have 60% of open positions for judges in the area. Prosecution office, 2,000 open positions. That's why sometimes we can see that court litigation procedures or criminal proceedings could take longer than it was previously expected. But it's because only that is not enough personnel in court to do the job in a good way. It's not easy to put lawyer account or any other specialist you may need in your area. That's why making your team is very important for doing business in Ukraine, because it's not easy to replace any expert, any specialist you have found. Our education system, since the previously 5 years when the COVID started, is not very efficient. The quality of the graduates is lower, and it's impossible to start using them as an expert in any area. So all the graduates from Ukrainian universities or colleges, before start working efficiently in the company, should have internal practice, approximately 2-3 months. That's why it's the biggest threat on I think, lack of qualified personnel, and it's not easy to find a personnel for any business when you started from the ground. But if you have gathered your team, later you have very strong competitive advantage on your competitors, because your team is your main asset. nowadays Ukraine. Russian missile strike, Russian drone strikes could destroy your factory, but if you have good team, your team could restore your damaged equipment, or you can buy new equipment. But if you have destroyed your team, it's almost impossible to replace it as easy as it can be seen abroad, especially in the USA, where the transfer of personnel is very easy. Do you have any questions about the security sector of Ukraine, about costs? I'll be glad to answer you. You can find my contacts on the final slide, and I'll provide my presentation so you can share it between all the people who can need any help of lawyer or attorney in Ukraine. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Sergey. If anyone has any questions, please let us know here, or you can follow up later, and I'll be happy to pass on the questions. Unless you want to contact someone directly, you have the information. There will be a recording available, I think, in a few days, and we can also share the presentations. But that was our first attempt to do this
series.
Out of the series, hopefully, and we'll go more into the details, more narrowly tailored for the industries and for specific questions. And if you're interested to know about something specific, you can guide us what kind of webinar you'd like to have. But thank you so much. I know it's late in Ukraine, and I see it's dark where he is, so it's probably like the power outage situation. That's why I also went video off, because I didn't want to take more power from you and your connection. But thank you very much for participating. Thank you for your interest. It means a lot for Ukraine, of course, and it means a lot for the future of business, hopefully the expansion on the new markets. And I'm shutting my mouth, and if anyone wants to say anything, this is a good chance to do that. Thank you. It's a real clap here. But thank you.
Thank you, Natalya. It was nice. Thank you for invitation.
Of course.
It was nice to be with you. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you. My favorite partners. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and hope to talk to you soon.